Welcome to the Norris Group Real Estate Podcast, a show committed to bringing you insights from thought leaders shaping the real estate industry. In each episode, we'll dive into conversations with industry experts and local insiders, all aimed at helping you thrive in an ever-changing real estate market, continuing the legacy that Bruce Norris created, sharing valuable knowledge, and empowering you on your real estate journey. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a newcomer, this is your go-to source for insider tips, market trends, and success strategies. Here's your host, Craig Evans. The Norris Group proudly presents I Survived Real Estate. Industry experts discuss evolving industry trends, real estate bubbles, inflation, and opportunities emerging for real estate professionals. We want to thank our platinum partners, UDirect IRA Services, San Diego Creative Investors Association, White Feather Investments, MVT Productions, Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club, and Realty 411 Magazine. See AIsurvivedRealEstate.com for event details, information on all our generous sponsors, and to connect with our speakers.
So let me ask you this. And I think we probably both agree. I mean, AI, the large language, it's here to stay, right? And it's going to have a major effect on our culture. What do you think are the biggest pitfalls of that now coming into our culture?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot like the internet. There's just a quote from Zuckerberg around, in creating Facebook, he saw all the opportunity, or maybe it was Bill Gates, Bill Gates talking about interconnecting computers and personal computers. And
yep.
He's now saying he should have realized how they could be used, in ways, disinformation and spread of conspiracy theories and all those kinds of things. And he didn't see that originally. And we got all that coming with AI, especially around deep fakes and all the rest. I think we're going to quickly find ourselves at the end of, this content marketing like we're doing right now, podcast, right? When AI can generate an endless amount of this stuff and we're all just so flooded with it, I think it's possible we just collectively all tune out. Like we hit a point where there's just everything on TikTok is it artificial? Is it real? I can't tell. Who's generating these stories? Why are they generating them? We're already having a loss of trust in media and stuff. And I think this advancement in technology, how quickly things spread, and, and we're our own worst enemy, right? Because we provide an instant feedback loop to those media companies that clickbait works. And that, this kind of, what's the word? Reactionary marketing, like they try to get your blood to boil. That works. That drives views. And so we're getting what we've asked for. We blame the media, but we're the ones clicking, right? They're just feeding us what we want. So I think that gets a lot worse really fast here with large language models, like you were talking about with SEO, and like coming up with an SEO strategy and then having large language models build all that content that you put on your website. Well, when everybody can do it, then what gets optimized, right? So the easier that becomes, the less effective it becomes. So early on, right now, today, you should totally be doing that, and that'll work for a week or two, or a while, maybe a year or two, right? But exactly. Ultimately, as more people, it's just like Facebook was amazing for small local businesses to market on at first. And now it's really hard for a small business on Facebook because they've optimized more and more for big business, one, right? Because that's where the money is. And big business has gotten in there and gotten better at it, and small business is losing. This is why, and this is really kind of my mantra now, and bring this back to Property Radar, right? Like fortunately, investors figured this out before everybody else, which is that targeted outbound marketing is the best chance small local folks have of competing, right? Because if I call somebody, Google can't insert themselves in that call
Right.
and, take my customer from me, right? If I send somebody a piece of direct mail, Zillow's not going to send them a piece of direct mail, right? Open Door still is, but Zillow's not, because for 10 million bucks, they can buy a Super Full ad, but to send every home in America a postcard, is $60 million.
Right.
So they're way better off with the Super Bowl ad, right? So doing these direct targeted outbound marketing, email, direct mail, calling, door knocking, like this is how this is how you survive as a small local business in this big business onslaught. Playing SEO games, PPC, all the rest, like the big companies are going to get AI first, they're going to deploy it first, and it's really, really going to be hard to keep up, even for the big companies.
We've all, you and I've been around long enough to see ups and down swings in markets and where that comes through. But let's face it, the stuff that's happened over the last 4 years has been some things that a lot of people are like, well, I never saw that one coming.
When I was running around talking in 2020 about what I thought was going to happen and the rest, I saw what we were doing, in terms of the kind of some of the policy reactions and stuff, as being what the Fed monetary policy and Congress on the fiscal policy side always do. And they were slow to do it in 2008, but ultimately did it, and it reflated the economy and brought things back around. The faster the next time, and so this has been kind of this cycle we've been in, starting in 2000. They were slow, but they got to it. In 2008, they were a little faster, and then so going forward. And so that all felt good, and like we'd hit reflation without hitting inflation. And I think what I missed, and clearly the Fed missed, was the supply chain side of that. So, okay, we fixed people's incomes, and to a degree at least, right? So there wasn't this big income hit. But now they still have the income, but there isn't the stuff to buy. And this creates this major imbalance. At the same time, that we had tariffs and not too much earlier tax cuts, both of which are very inflationary. And I don't think people fully understand that.
Right.
That supply, I 100% agree with you. That supply piece was the piece I didn't think through well enough.
With all the stuff we've seen over the last 4 years, between all of that interest rate increases, and again, I remember 18% interest rate. So I try to, and I remember that, what's that?
The 18% interest rates. My parents finished their dream home right as that happened. And back then your construction loan didn't roll over into your finished financing. So they had to go refinance out of the construction loan because it was due right when interest rates hit 18%. They almost lost everything.
With all of those things that have happened over the last 4 years, in your opinion, where do you believe the market is headed?
So anybody that's listened to me over a while, right, will say that I think we largely bounce from crisis to crisis, right? So, and I call it, kind of a crisis cycle economy. And, we are slow after a crisis or we tend to leave our foot on the gas a little too long after crisis. We certainly did the last time, and that's part of the inflation, right? We were too conservative, and we kept rates too low and stuff too long, and that had a lot to do. Besides the fact that, oh wow, now remote work, I can move. Let me go buy the place wherever I want to buy it, right? And so we had this mass kind of relocation that pushed home prices up really quickly. At the same time, we kept rates way too low, way too long because of just a very conservative monetary approach. And so if we look forward, right, we will have another crisis. When that happens or why it happens, the deck I had in 2016 had pandemic on it. I had a slide that says, here's, we're going to have another crisis. Here's all the possible things, right? So a terrorist attack, and honestly, black swan events aren't all terrorist, 9/11s, pandemics. The internet was a black swan.
Right.
Large language models, mark my word, are a black swan. Right? You're going to have huge disruptions throughout the economy that we haven't really understood yet and haven't really felt yet. And so that it may be just that one that really drives the next recession, or in this technology curve that we're on. As much as it may drive a recession, what it drives even more is a wealth gap. And so by all objective measures, our economy's awesome right now. Yet you hear a lot about, especially from one party, like how bad our economy is. And I get it, because to a lot of people, it doesn't feel great. And they see this wealth, because this wealth gap's growing. And neither party really has any great plans for how to address it, right? One party wants to steal the wealth and redistribute it. And, the other party, I don't know what their plan. It's not clear to me what their plan is on, but neither one has a good plan, in my humble opinion. Right. And so I think that's the underlying feeling there, and I think that's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So, and I think large language models are one of those things. So, do we get into a place where people just react and go, I'm going to start pulling back? I'm worried. Sometimes recessions are just self-fulfilling things. Like, we just all you know what? I'm going to tighten up for a while. I'm a little worried, right? That can cause a recession as much as a crisis. So is it a pandemic? Is it a terrorist attack? Is it large language models? I don't know, but I do know we're going to have another one. And what I also know, when that happens, we have a dysfunctional government in the United States. And so we only have monetary policy. So they're going to lower rates. And, I was on record back in 2020 saying, I think it's more likely we'll see 1% rates than 6% rates. I was wrong. We saw 8% rates. But I think we will have the next crisis, and we will see the same reaction we've had for the last three crises, which is to push rates down to near zero, try to keep the economy going. They don't want to see housing prices fall, right? We have unprecedented home equity, which is one of the reasons that those, at least who have a house, are incredibly wealthy right now. Those that don't have a house are pretty pissed off right now, because it's harder than ever to buy one, right? So that's that wealth gap again.
Yep.
But we don't want to see house prices decline 50% like they did in 2008. We may want to as investors, but as the larger group, we don't want to see that happen. So we prop it up. We're going to prop it up with lower rates. And I still think in the next crisis, we'll see interest rates maybe in the ones, certainly back in the twos.
There was one lever, in my opinion, that I thought if it had changed, it would have swung that. And that, in my opinion, I thought it was the unemployment lever. If the unemployment lever had switched, I thought we would have probably seen 1% rates. But obviously, when COVID hit by March of 2020, I remember we were thinking, I was having meetings with DR and Lennar and Pulte and a lot of the big nationals and the large regionals. We were having, there was a conglomerate of us that got together and we were having meetings. And I never forget the first one, the CEO of Lennar was on talking on this Zoom meeting. And he was saying, guys, we don't, he was basically kind of fretting. We don't know what's about to happen. Like, are we all going to be like, is this thing going dark in a matter of weeks? Right. And it was so interesting that literally 6 days later, it was like somebody popped a cork and then the entire construction industry went berserk.
Right.
And within 30 days, you couldn't build enough fast enough. Build fast enough,
Right.
It was
Now, in some of
insane.
those areas, we're starting to see some of those areas that people went off to, like Tennessee and certain areas, like we're starting to see pretty big, like people are rolling out. This wasn't really for me, et cetera.
That's
And
right.
like pendulum's always swinging is one of my mantras. Change is the only constant, and all opportunity comes from change.
Yeah, yeah. But I always felt, and I think that's one of those things again. Like I saw the labor numbers last week, and they came out, and I'm looking at. I think I think it was 2 months ago they had to come back and reverse the one from a few months before that.
Right.
Of what I'm seeing on the street now, I think we'll probably see that labor number is reversed again, but based off stuff. I mean, that's my gut, but
Yeah.
I think that labor number is one of those things that would be a big push at continuing to drive that number to where we could see those lower numbers again. But
yeah, I don't think labor will be enough alone to get us back to 2. I actually think it would be bad
yeah,
monetary policy to go back that low. But you take higher unemployment together with any kind of crisis or recession,
right,
and a incompetent, incapable Congress, and monetary policy then becomes the only thing. So the Fed's going to do what they can to try to keep things rolling, and and potentially do a lot of destruction. A lot of people want to see the end of the Fed, but I don't think they'd like to see what the U.S. economy would look like with is they screw up, and there's no question. Like, they let inflation go too fast. They're probably they make mistakes, but compare their mistakes to the mistakes in Congress, and I think
regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, right?
Yeah, like we're not we as the population in the United States are not electing the best and brightest.
What would you recommend for a new investor to look at? Which direction would you tell them to go?
So my advice actually is no different now than it's been in the bottom of the bottom and the tops of the tops, right? Which is, there's kind of two sides to the real estate, right? There's the flip side, in which case, right, you do the flip, right? Like, it's like turns on inventory at a grocery store. Grocery store may only make a couple percentage points on a thing that you're buying, but if they can turn the entire inventory of that grocery store once or twice a month, right, in the total dollar volume, that 1 point a month becomes 12 points, right? Like it expands. And same thing, by doing the flip quickly, you reduce your market risk. You know what it's worth today. It's pretty obvious, right? And so the quicker you get in, the quicker you get out, the better you buy, the more margin you have in the deal when you buy it, the better the deal it is. And that's true at the top of a market, at the bottom of a market. Even when I decided to get out in 2000, at the end of 2005, I had my worst one I got stuck with for a while because it was a meth lab and I had to do lots of work to it. And that one ended up, down. Well, I thought I was going to sell it for $320 when I bought it. I ended up selling it for $260. That's a big decrease, right? And it hurt. That house sold for $45,000 on the courthouse steps 2 years later.
Really?
So, but I had lots of time, right? And I got hurt a little, but I didn't get hurt bad, right?
Yep.
And I think if you're on that flip side, just move quickly, right? Yep. And there's not a lot of market change that happens overnight. That foreclosure crisis from 2005, when I first saw it, to probably 2009, when it really hit bottom, you're talking 3 or 4 years.
Right.
That it really took to cycle all the way down, right? It's one of the benefits of the real estate business. It takes quite a while to cycle. The other side is longer term, right? If you bought in 2006, you have quite a bit of equity today.
That's right.
Doesn't matter at all. And if you bought in 2006 on good fundamentals, where that had good cash flow and a good return, or provided you a home that you loved and could afford, who gives a shit what the market did between then and now? It doesn't matter till you go to sell. It doesn't matter at all. Right. So that's kind of the two things. And that works in every market all the time. And if you stick to those fundamentals, like, okay, it's long term, is it a good investment today? Where you get yourself in trouble is like, I'm going to buy this thing on the hope that the market's going to go up another 10%. The market's going to go up another 20%. It's not a good deal today. I'm not an investor anymore. I'm a speculator. Yep. Right. I had a friend buy a rental with a 2% cap rate in 2006, right? 2% return on his money, paid cash for a rental property, 2% return on his money. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, it went up $100,000 last year. I'm going to make $100,000 a year. That kind of thing gets you in a lot of trouble. The Robert Kiyosaki crowd and all the folks are like leverage. Well, they finally learned. I mean, there was a long period of time where I'm a guy, I don't like debt. I don't have a lot of debt. And boy, I felt like an idiot for quite a long time there, right? There was a long period of time from probably 2007 till interest rates spiked, where really being heavily levered, I could have made a lot more, maybe an order of magnitude more money than I made by not being heavily levered, right? It was, over that period of time, it was a huge mistake. But I had no debt when interest rates changed, right? I didn't get caught like a lot of folks got caught, especially if they're doing commercial, because in commercial, you can't do 30-year financing. So, great if you did residential 30-year financing and locked in those low rates. Good on you. I probably should have done more of that myself. But otherwise, these things are just swinging. And so if you play by these basic rules, is it a good investment? Does it give you a good return for a long-term investment? Or can you get a good return if you quickly flip it in today's market? And, if the market goes down 5%, if the market's to move more than 5 or 10% in a year, even back in the 2006, 2007 timeframe, is a lot.
It is.
And we won't make that mistake again where we dump that much inventory that quickly. It just won't happen.
Right. Well, listen, you've given me a lot of time. I've got just a couple more questions for you if you've got a few minutes for me. So what is your favorite I Survived memory?
Oh, wow. I love the whole event. Some of my favorite time though is in the limo with the other panelists coming and going. That and that's obviously something that not everybody gets the chance to be a part of. The content is really great, but the piece that when I talk to people about the event and I tell them about the event, it's the cause, right? It's the raising the money and the things for St. Jude's and Make-A-Wish and the cancer one that Susan G. Komen really got started around Aaron Wall, Bruce's wife. That is the thing that feels the best. And then of course seeing all these old friends every year is amazing too. So yeah, lots of good stuff.
Was there ever anybody or a time on the panel that you were just like, man, that's just wrong? And I guess even more so, and I say this because Bruce is was it ever Bruce? I mean, all kidding aside, but I mean, it's one of those things because I know that I've been there and I've heard things, the last several years, I've heard things like, oh, I don't know that I would agree with that one. Right. But it's been
Christopher Thornburg and I people always bring up when he and I butted heads.
Right.
And, so that's the one people probably bring up to me the most. I think one thing is on the wrong thing, just my worldview is less about right or wrong, but why is it right for them? Why do they think that, right? I disagree with it, but I'm less interested in whether they're right or wrong and more interested in what led them to get there, right? And why are other people coming to that same conclusion, which I disagree with? Only history will tell us what was right or what was wrong. And even then, Doug Duncan he's like, well, the way to be a really good, analyst or what's the right word, but person out here talking about these things is to say, well, I think this is going to happen, but it's possible this is going to happen, right? And you always leave yourself the back door, and then you're always right, And Doug is particularly good at that. I think most of the panelists are relatively good at that. I probably should have remembered that when I said, I think 2 or, ones is more likely than 6. I should have said, unless, some other factor plays like, we're going to give everybody a lot of money with nothing to buy and they're all going to go compete for the same stuff, which I didn't foresee,
If you got a second, I want to ask one more question.
Yeah.
So we got just an awesome group next week. We got Mark Palem, that's
Mark's
taking
great.
taking over for Doug. We got Selma Hepp from CoreLogic.
Selma, known her for years. Yeah. Back since she was with California Association of Realtors. She's awesome.
And we've got Bill Allen with 7-Figure Flipping.
Yeah.
We've got Mark De La Tour with SBD Housing Solutions. Super
Mark,
great guy.
in his office. He's great. Yeah. Yep. Awesome.
And then, of course, Bruce, right? And so if you were in the crowd next week and not on a panel, what would you want to learn from the people we just talked about?
Well, from some of those folks, it's they're out there active, investors, making stuff happen. What's working for them? Like, I think we'll get a lot of investors in the crowd. What's working for them? Where are they getting their deals right now? That's always a question I get. Where are our customers getting their deals? What's working? What's not? I think that one is particularly useful. I think, interesting to see, like, where are they using or not using, AI, large language models? Have they had success yet? If so, where, right? Like, I think, not everybody's doing it yet. Not everybody's even embracing that yet. So, some folks probably won't be yet, but the others that are like that, I think that's a super fascinating question I have for pretty much everybody these days. Are you using it? If so, how? How's it helping, in your life? I think that's particularly good. I'm sure lots of folks would like to know, economic forecast, where are things going to go? Where is it headed? We're in such a, I don't know what Bruce is saying right now. I need to go find out, but this is broken Bruce's chart at this point on the affordability side. Right. And I would think, and so I think we're in very uncharted territories. And I liked Charles Munger, of Buffett, a number of years ago said, in these kinds of times, anybody who thinks they know what's going to happen next is a charlatan, or
That's right.
So
that's right.
I don't think we know. So I think like what's working today is I think a lot more valuable than trying to predict the future right now.
Sean, I really appreciate your time, appreciate your thoughtfulness and your care for our organization and what we do. Hopefully you'll be able to be back with us next year for I Survived.
Yeah, awesome event, and really sorry I'm missing it, and hi to everybody that I'm going to be missing there that's watching here. So thank you, Craig. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. For everybody listening. Yeah. Thanks for Joey for all he does that nobody sees him in the background there. That's it.
Absolutely.
That's it. So, well, listen, everybody, thank you so much for being on. I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
We'd also like to thank our gold sponsors: Inland Valley Association of Realtors, Keystone CPA, NorCal RIA, NSD REI, Pasadena Phoebe, PropertyRadar, The Collective Genius. See AIsurvivedRealEstate.com for event details. For more information on hard money loans, trust deed investing, and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For more information on passive investing through the DBL Capital Real Estate Investment Fund, please visit dblcapital.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under the California DRE license 01219911, Florida Mortgage Lender license 1577, and NMLS license 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the hard money tab.